Imagine this. It's 11 p.m. Your body is tired, your mind is foggy, but your thumb, it's still scrolling, clip after clip, video after video, laughing at something you'll forget tomorrow, clicking next episode without thinking, eyes glazed, dopamine buzzing. You tell yourself, just 5 more minutes. But those minutes become hours, and those hours, they become your life. Welcome to the age of distraction. We live in a world where silence feels like suffering, where every gap, every pause, every tiny moment of stillness must be filled with noise, with stimulation, with entertainment. But have you ever stopped, really stopped, to ask, why? Why do we fear being alone with our own thoughts? Why does a single quiet moment feel unbearable? And more importantly, what is this obsession doing to us? You might think it's harmless, just fun, just a way to relax. But what if I told you, this addiction to constant amusement isn't just stealing your time, it's slowly eroding your mind, your culture, your potential. And the scariest part? You don't even notice it. Because you're not just being entertained, you're being programmed. We've mistaken distraction for comfort, binge watching for rest, scrolling for connection. But these are illusions, cheap imitations of what we really need: stillness, presence, engagement. This isn't a rant against entertainment. Stories, music, art, they've always been part of the human soul. But what we're experiencing now, it's different. We've gone from enjoying entertainment to being enslaved by it. And it's time to ask, not just what you're consuming, but what's being consumed in return. Your attention, your time, your mind. This is the trap no one talks about. But in the next few minutes, we're going to rip the curtain wide open. We'll explore how this happened, what it's doing to you, and most importantly, how to take your life back. So stay with me, because what you'll hear by the end of this journey might just wake you up.
Let's go back. Back before Netflix, before TikTok, before smartphones and screens and infinite scroll. Back to the firelight. Picture it. A circle of people sitting beneath the stars, faces glowing orange from the flame, eyes locked onto the storyteller. The stories weren't flashy. There were no sound effects, no jump cuts, no autoplay, just a voice, a tale, and shared attention. In that moment, entertainment was sacred. It was how we passed down wisdom, how we built identity, how we connected. Fast forward centuries. From Homer's epics to Shakespeare's plays, from Mozart's symphonies to the first black and white films, entertainment evolved. But one thing remained the same. It required presence, time, and most of all, effort. To listen, to reflect, to participate. Then came the algorithm. Today, entertainment doesn't require our attention. It hijacks it. With one tap, you enter a world that never ends. A world where silence doesn't exist, and stillness feels unbearable. We used to seek stories. Now they're injected into our day, uninvited, tailored, tweaked, and fed to us by invisible machines that know what you'll click before you do. This is no longer just entertainment. It's a system, engineered with one goal: keep you there. And the saddest part? We call it choice. But are we really choosing when the next video starts in 3 seconds? When the app buzzes every 10 minutes, just to remind you it exists? This isn't evolution. It's erosion of depth, of agency, of the precious pause between stimulus and response. Entertainment used to be something we gathered around. Now it's something we escape into, alone, mindlessly, repeatedly. So ask yourself, when did entertainment stop bringing us together and start pulling us away? When did the storyteller around the fire get replaced by a glowing rectangle that watches you more than you watch it? This shift isn't harmless. It's profound. Because what we consume shapes how we think, and what we don't question controls us. But don't worry, this isn't where the story ends. Next, we'll explore how technology turned entertainment into a psychological trap, and why your brain never stood a chance. Let's get something clear. You are not weak. You're not lazy. You're not undisciplined. You're outmatched. Because the thing you're up against isn't just entertainment. It's psychological warfare, engineered by some of the smartest minds on the planet. Let me explain. In the 20th century, psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something chilling. He placed pigeons in a box and gave them food as a reward. But only sometimes. Not every time. Not predictably. The result? The pigeons became obsessed. They pecked and pecked, more than they ever did before. Why? Because the intermittent reward, unpredictable, just maybe, is far more addictive than a guaranteed one. Sound familiar? Every notification, every like, every scroll down your feed is a digital peck at the lever, waiting for a reward that might be there. This isn't accidental. It's design. Apps, platforms, games, they're not just entertainment. They are attention traps, coded to hijack your dopamine system, to bypass your reasoning, to make you crave more, even when you feel worse after. And here's the kicker. The more you indulge, the less control you have. Because your brain is rewiring itself, literally. Studies show that constant digital stimulation shrinks your attention span, reduces impulse control, and lowers your ability to delay gratification. You become more reactive, more restless, more dependent on the next hit. It's not a moral failure, it's neuroscience. And while you're scrolling through memes, big tech is scrolling through your psychology, learning, adjusting, optimizing to keep you on the hook. Because the longer you stay, the more money they make. And that's the brutal truth. Your attention is not just valuable, it's for sale. But here's the thing. If they can rewire your brain with distraction, then you can rewire it with intention. And in the next chapter, we'll uncover exactly what this addiction is doing to your ability to think, to focus, and to imagine. Because the cost isn't just your time, it's your mind. There was a time when boredom sparked brilliance, when silence led to reflection, when deep thought wasn't a luxury, it was a habit. But today, thinking feels hard. Reading a long article feels exhausting. Sitting with a difficult idea? Almost unbearable. Why? Because the modern brain isn't built for depth anymore. It's been rewired for speed, reward, and reaction. We've gone from contemplation to consumption. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat with an idea? Not for 30 seconds, but for 30 minutes? Can you even remember? It's not just anecdotal. Science backs it up. MRI scans show that excessive screen exposure, especially from short-form, dopamine-heavy content, weakens the brain's prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for focus, reasoning, and decision-making. Your ability to pay attention, to hold a single thought, to engage with something that doesn't instantly entertain you, is fading. Slowly, silently, fatally. And here's the cruel irony. The more you consume shallow content, the less capable you become of appreciating deeper ones. A Dostoevsky novel starts to feel boring. A philosophy lecture becomes too slow. Even conversations, the real kind, begin to feel like effort. Because you've been trained, not by accident, but by design, to expect constant novelty, instant reward, zero friction. But this is the price of intellectual erosion. A generation raised on autoplay doesn't just lose its attention span, it loses its mental stamina. And when the brain no longer stretches, no longer wrestles with complexity, no longer seeks to connect dots or question assumptions. It atrophies. We're not just losing time to entertainment, we're losing the very faculties that made human progress possible. Imagination, critical thinking, deep curiosity. These aren't passive traits, they're muscles. And right now, we're letting them rot. But here's the hopeful twist. Neuroplasticity means your brain is always changing, which means it can heal, it can grow back, but only if you stop feeding it noise and start feeding it meaning. In the next part of our journey, we'll look at what happens when this mental erosion spills beyond the individual, into our culture, our art, and our values. Because the decay isn't just personal anymore, it's collective, and it's happening faster than we think. Once upon a time, culture was how a civilization remembered itself. It was our mirror, our collective soul, a space where we wrestled with meaning, explored truth, and preserved beauty. It was found in the brushstrokes of a painting, in the pages of a novel, in a melody that haunted you long after it ended. Culture was where humanity stretched toward its higher self. But today, culture chases clicks. It glorifies speed over substance, virality over virtue, novelty over nuance. Art used to disturb, challenge, provoke reflection. Now, it's just content. Just something to scroll past in 3 seconds. Or swipe away if it doesn't hook us fast enough. Ask yourself, when was the last time you heard someone quote Plato, or discuss Dostoevsky, or debate the meaning of a poem not because it was trending, but because it mattered? We're not just distracted as individuals, we're distracted as a civilization. Instead of honoring the minds that shaped our world, we reward the shallowest voices with the loudest platforms. Reality TV becomes our collective theater. Trending memes become our mythology. And what does that say about us? When the best of our minds are buried, and the most viral noise floats to the top, it says we're no longer curating our culture. We're letting algorithms curate it for us. And algorithms don't care about wisdom. They care about retention. They'll show you what keeps you watching, not what helps you grow. The result? We live in a world where the trivial is celebrated, and the timeless is forgotten. Where a TikTok dance gets more attention than a human rights crisis. Where a viral prank outshines a documentary that took 3 years to make. This isn't just unfortunate. It's dangerous, because culture is how we remember. And when we forget what matters, we become vulnerable. To manipulation, to stagnation, to decline. But this doesn't have to be our fate. In the next section, we'll look at how this cultural decay isn't just intellectual, but deeply emotional. Because behind the noise and the screens is something we're all starting to feel, an emptiness. And that void isn't just personal, it's a crisis of meaning. We are more connected than ever. Messages fly across the globe in seconds. We can FaceTime a friend in Tokyo, react to a post in Paris, or scroll through the lives of thousands without ever leaving our bed. And yet, why does it feel like we've never been lonelier? There's a silence no number of notifications can fill, a hunger no number of hearts, likes, or fire emojis can satisfy. This is the paradox of the digital age: hyperconnectivity on the outside, isolation on the inside. Because what we've gained in convenience, we've lost in depth. We've replaced eye contact with read receipts, replaced long talks with quick replies. We used to sit across from each other, feel each other's energy, read the pauses, the sighs, the hesitation between words. Now, we double tap, we swipe, we react, but we don't relate. And in this world of endless scrolling, We start to forget how to actually be with one another, how to sit in silence without reaching for our phones, how to listen, not just to respond, but to understand. Robert Putnam once warned of this in his book, Bowling Alone. He wrote about the decline of social capital, the invisible glue that holds communities together. Shared spaces, shared rituals, shared meaning. Now, those communal moments are being outsourced to screens. Even our solitude, once a place of reflection, has been colonized by content. We don't sit with ourselves anymore. We scroll to avoid ourselves. But here's the cost. When we lose real connection, we lose empathy. We stop seeing people as people and start seeing them as profiles. We become less patient, more performative, more afraid of vulnerability. Because on social media, there's no space for nuance, no room for rawness. Only the highlight reel, filtered, edited, optimized for approval. And in chasing approval, we forget how to be authentic. But maybe that's why you're here. Because something inside you knows. This isn't enough. 1,000 friends online still can't touch the soul like one deep conversation can. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore how this disconnect, this endless loop of distraction, doesn't just isolate us. It immobilizes us, and slowly, without realizing it, we lose the will to act. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange numbness after hours of scrolling, that ache in your chest when another day slips away, and you've done nothing. Not because you didn't want to, not because you're incapable, but because something inside felt frozen, paralyzed. This isn't laziness. It's not a lack of motivation. It's a psychological state, a subtle kind of paralysis, caused by overstimulation and mental exhaustion. See, the human mind wasn't built for infinite input. Every headline, every ping, every reel, it all adds up. And slowly, it starts to drain your mental battery without you even realizing it. Until one day, you wake up, and you can't move. Not physically, but spiritually. You want to create, but you consume instead. You want to start, but you scroll. You want to change, but you binge-watch another season. You tell yourself, I'll just watch one episode. Then suddenly, it's 2 a.m. Your dreams are still on pause, and your potential? Still waiting. What's happening here is deeper than distraction. It's something psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. The more pleasure you chase, the less satisfied you feel. Because quick hits of dopamine, the kind you get from endless entertainment, don't build lasting joy. They build dependence. And dependence dulls drive. It numbs initiative. It strips you of the hunger that once made you dream, create, build. Worse, it tricks you into thinking you're fine. You feel busy, but you're stuck. You feel stimulated, but you're empty. And that's the tragedy. Because the more you numb yourself with passive consumption, the harder it becomes to engage with reality. And reality, for all its discomfort, is where life actually happens. Where love grows, where ideas form, where action begins. Entertainment isn't evil. But when it becomes your default coping mechanism, your autopilot escape, it doesn't just waste time, it wastes you. But here's the hope. This isn't permanent. This isn't who you are. You can break the cycle. You can reclaim your attention. You can take action again. And in the next part, we'll begin that process. With awareness, with boundaries, with simple steps that start to free your mind. Because you weren't born to binge. You were born to build. So now we know the problem. We know we're being overstimulated, rewired, and slowly numbed by a world that profits from our passivity. But here's the part that matters most. You are not powerless. The first step is awareness. And if you've made it this far, you've already begun. Because once you see the system, you can stop being controlled by it. So let's get practical. Start by noticing, not judging, not shaming, just observing. How often do you reach for your phone without thinking? How many hours do you lose to content you don't even remember? When do you scroll to escape instead of engage? Track it. Write it down. Make it visible. Because what stays hidden grows stronger. Then, take back control, not with willpower alone, but with structure. Set boundaries. No screens for the first hour of your day. Create tech-free zones in your home. Use grayscale mode. Turn off notifications. It seems small, but small steps build momentum, and momentum leads to change. Next, replace the empty with the meaningful. Don't just reduce screen time. Fill that space with something that feeds you. Read a book that stretches your thinking. Go on a walk without headphones. Call someone and talk. Really talk. Reintroduce your brain to boredom, because boredom is where ideas are born. And here's the deeper part. Reconnect with intention. Ask yourself daily, what do I want to experience today? What do I want to create? What do I want to remember? Don't let your attention be stolen. Spend it deliberately. Because time is not your most precious resource. Attention is. Where your attention goes, your life follows. So give it to what matters. Yes, the world is loud. Yes, algorithms are powerful. Yes, discipline is hard. But awareness is the beginning of freedom. You don't have to escape the modern world. You just have to live in it with your eyes open. And in the next chapter, we'll talk about what happens when we do exactly that. When we step off the treadmill and start creating a life that feeds our spirit instead of draining it. What happens when you step out of the noise? At first, it's uncomfortable. The silence feels awkward. Your fingers twitch, reaching for distraction. Your mind starts panicking. What now? But then, something shifts. You start to notice things. A thought that's been waiting to surface. A question that's been quietly knocking. A part of yourself you forgot was there. This is where the real journey begins. The renaissance of the mind. It doesn't take place on your screen. It begins in the moments you reclaim, for stillness, for learning, for creation. You don't need to be a philosopher to read philosophy. You don't need to be an artist to make art. You just need to care enough to begin. Because the mind, like a muscle, wants to grow. It longs for complexity, for challenge, for wonder. So feed it. Read books that don't give you all the answers. Have conversations that make you pause before you respond. Sit with ideas that don't comfort you, but confront you. Start small. A few pages, a few minutes of quiet, a journal entry, a sketch, a deep breath between tasks. This is how it starts. Not with grand declarations, but with small revolutions repeated daily. And as your mind awakens, so does your creativity. Because once you stop consuming, you start imagining. You start building, writing, composing, designing, thinking, creating. Not for likes, not for trends, but because something inside you needs to be expressed. This is what the modern world is starving for. Not more content, but more consciousness. A revival of thought, a restoration of depth, a rediscovery of what it means to be truly alive. And no, it won't always be comfortable. You'll get bored. You'll feel restless. You'll want to check your phone. But if you push through that resistance, you'll find something extraordinary on the other side. Yourself, your real self. Not the curated profile, not the distracted version, but the one who thinks, who feels, who creates, who lives. And in the final chapter of this journey, we'll confront the biggest question of all. Will you let entertainment define your life? Or will you take it back and define it yourself? We like to believe we're free. We can watch what we want, buy what we want, scroll, swipe, skip, anytime, anywhere. We mistake the illusion of choice for the reality of freedom. But true freedom? It's not about choosing anything. It's about knowing why you choose it. Because if every decision you make is driven by habit, by impulse, by algorithm, are you still choosing? Or are you just reacting? Modern entertainment has become the perfect sedative, not forced upon us, but willingly embraced. It doesn't silence you, it distracts you, and that's more dangerous. Because silence screams, but distraction whispers, and convinces you there's nothing to hear. So here we are, at the edge of something vital, a decision that isn't dramatic, but defining. Will you continue to drift, floating through feeds, chasing dopamine, filling every empty space with noise? Or will you wake up? Will you pause long enough to feel the discomfort of being present? To sit with your thoughts instead of silencing them? To choose growth over gratification? Depth over distraction? Creation over consumption? Because the truth is, every moment you spend awake, conscious, deliberate, that's a revolution. In a world addicted to passive living, presence is rebellion. And that rebellion begins with one small but radical act: ownership. Owning your attention, owning your time, owning your mind, not renting it out to the highest bidder. You don't have to delete every app. You don't have to live in a cave. But you do have to decide, what kind of life do I want to live? Not the life that's been curated for you, but the one you craft. Thoughtfully, intentionally, honestly, because in the end, you will not be remembered for how many videos you watched, but for what you built, what you gave, who you became. So I ask you one last time, will you let entertainment define you? Or will you rise above the noise and finally define yourself? Because that's what's at stake here. Not just your productivity, not just your peace, but your freedom, your presence, your purpose. And in a distracted world, a focused soul becomes unstoppable. The choice is yours.